Does it feel like we're on the road to WrestleMania now?
Unfortunately, Raw feels like a giant Netflix ad on the regular, but this week it was nothing but filler. We had multiple meaningless exhibition matches full of people who are already going to fight each other on the WrestleMania card itself. We had mid promos, mid segments, and repeats of segments that we've already seen. But we started off the show with Stephanie Valkyr walking instead of pyro. The same thing as usual. We just see people walking like they're on their way from Kroger to the car with their bags in their hands, and then we see Charlie Flair and Alexa Bliss holding hands, and then we get Roman Reigns having this promo thing of him calling CM Punk a hypocrite and pointing out the hypocrisies that CM Punk has said on his scripted pipe bomb, well, scripted promo, because it's not a pipe bomb if it's not from the heart. His scripted promo from last week, but when he was talking about the buzzwords and lowering ticket prices, even though that CM Punk doesn't really care about the ticket prices as long as he's getting paid. Uh, I mean, even he said that he wouldn't have even come back to the company if he wasn't main event in WrestleMania, and that he's not here to make friends. He's here to make money. But then we go to Triple H being in the ring for some reason. He's in the ring. He's in the ring. He's in the ring. And the part that I find funny is that people keep saying, "Well, we need a big authority figure. We need a big authority figure. We need this isn't 2014." He's in the ring. He's injecting himself into this rivalry in the promos in the promo segments for no reason. The dude's out there every week, but this time he was out there twice. No, actually, Triple H was featured four times. He was featured in in an advertisement of Stephanie McMahon's What's Your Story podcast. But the thing is, the dude the dude's so down our throats to the point where Triple H, he's not just gonna be on his wife's interview show. He'll be the interviewer. He's gonna be interviewing her. What the hell? So he's got to be the star of that too. But yeah, just like he's the star of Raw whenever we see Oba and Brock. So not only do we have this dude in two of our Obafemi and Brock segments this week. We even had a commercial or an advertisement for his gear for WrestleMania 32 last decade. So the dude was featured four times in total on this week's Raw, which I find to be utterly ridiculous. Why do we need to see Triple H featured on Raw when this is the go home show to WrestleMania? The dude he put more effort into booking himself this week than to booking the actual show. He gave us filler, but I've noticed whenever he's on screen on the TV shows, the writing is always garbage. He just does the bare minimum. All right, well, I'll put you here, put you here, put you here, and then do the bare minimum for the rest of the people. You mean to tell me that is more important to see someone like Triple H instead of having a final go home show that we can remember? This go home show offered nothing. For some reason, Triple H he's there again. I don't understand. And of course, you'll have people still defend it, say, yeah, well, to be fair, they do need a big authority figure. This is Monday Night Raw, the final Monday Night Raw before WrestleMania, and Triple H is featured four times in the show. Dude is featured in an ad, a WrestleMania entrance commercial, and Obafemi and Brock segments twice. It's ridiculous. He's there at the beginning of the night with Adam Pearce and the end of the night. Is we don't need this, especially because the show was so horrendous. But this is what we get. This is what we get. And he's not even there as Triple H. He's there as Paul Levesque. He's there as the booker. He's not there as the wrestler. But anyways, we get Brock Lesnar saying, "You won't know Obafemi after this weekend." He was talking to the crowd. And then I'm pretty sure that this means that Oba might lose, but honestly, I think Oba Femi losing will be one of the dumbest decisions. And the main card for this year is pretty bad, pretty awful, pretty hardworking key workhorse stars are being left off the card. But I find that to be ridiculous. You know, people like EO, people like Julia, people who actually grinded. You know, I just don't understand why they're being left off the card. Tiffany Stratton being left off the card doesn't really, bother me because her heart's not in the business, and she's even said it herself that she's not trying to wrestle past 30. Hollywood is her main goal, which proves it to be true because her matches have been pretty wonky recently. But then we go to I show speed, I show meat training. Cool, I guess. I mean, I'm a fan of speed, but this isn't. I mean, and then they show us the WrestleMania set finally being built. We have this is the same week of the actual event, but this just because Bruno Mars concert and everything, but which shows that they shouldn't have run it back in Las Vegas. They should have just ran it. They should have just had it in New Orleans, Louisiana, where they were originally going to have it. Brock Lesnar on what the hell, the Rock in February 2025, February 21st to be exact. He came out and announced it that WrestleMania 42 was going to be in New Orleans. So to rob New Orleans, and then this is karma because now they couldn't even build up their set. That's karma though. So I don't even feel bad. So we're probably going to get, I don't know, a WrestleMania 35 set or a lazy LED screen and a ramp or something like that, most likely. So then we go to Lyra Valkyria versus Charlotte Flair. So a face versus face for no reason. And their, justification, being lazy is, well, because Lyra is avenging her friend's loss, her fruit roll-up loss. But I'm like, well, they shouldn't even be wrestling in the first place because they have a match literally this weekend. Then on top of that, they're both faces. So the crowd is silent for the women involved, and they're just cheering for, the referee counting to 3 and the moves that they're doing. That, like, when you have a face versus face of this caliber, the crowd is usually confused and lost. They'll be like, ooh, a leg drop, ooh, a moonsault. But then they're not really chant, or they chant for both, and then it's hard to keep track. So the crowd goes like, okay, well, should I cheer this person? 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 So they get confused, get on their phones, record, and then they don't say anything until the match is over, and then they chant yay for whoever who won because they're a fan of both women. These face versus face matches, especially nothing but filler. This whole go home show of Raw was just lazy exhibition matches full of people who are already wrestling each other. So then, we have, also, while Lyra Valkyria is doing a moonsault, we have the WrestleMania 25% off ad thing because they're desperate. And, they're not selling for night 2, so that's why Pat McAfee said, yeah, well, pretty much he said, he buried the second night of Monday Night Raw. He was like, yeah, just don't even pay attention to night 2 Saturday, night 2 Sunday of WrestleMania. Don't even worry about that. Just worry about Saturday because we're struggling to sell tickets because the creative is trash and TKO made it worse. Even though that TKO and WWE War is pretty much fake at this point because none of the promos have been genuine really. I just don't understand why they couldn't have just run it back in New Orleans with Louisiana. That's all they had to do. That's all they had to do. It was a terrible decision. It was a terrible, which proves that TKO knows nothing about the business for them to run it back in Las Vegas. And also, Lyra won. She beat Charlotte off of fruit roll up. They just love these fruit roll up finishes. It's really creative. It's really, really, really creative. And then we get the MFTs, taking a break from being jobbers on SmackDown, and Jeff Cobb, who was one of my favorite wrestlers in New Japan. He's just settling just because of the paycheck. He's just willing to dead his career on the main roster. Hikuleo as well, and then for some reason LA Knight's still involved with the Usos. But the last time I checked, LA Knight and Jay had something going on to where Jay was about to turn heel, and then he, they don't even know what they're doing with these people, so I don't know. So then we have a match confirmed for tonight with these pretty sure it's like I don't even care, so it's probably like a 6-man tag or whatever. And then we go to Penta on commercial break, which I did not see. So yeah. And then we get Stephanie Vaquer and Liv Morgan in a copy and paste segment. And this is something that I've noticed for weeks. So these pull apart brawls and these, copy and paste things, they'll have someone attack someone from behind. Wrestler A attacks wrestler B. And then the next week, wrestler B attacks wrestler A. And then wrestler A will talk about the other person's mom. And then wrestler B will talk about the other person's mom. So last week we had Stephanie Vaquer push Liv Morgan into somebody. Now we have Liv Morgan pushing Stephanie Vaquer into somebody. This writing is just great. It's so lazy. And then I'll give another example. 1 week of Raw, we went off air with Roman Reigns putting CM Punk through the announce table, and then the next week after, or a couple weeks after that, we had CM Punk putting Roman Reigns through the announce table. It's just copy and paste booking, but switch the person. That is it's just filler, man. It truly is. And then we get Liv Morgan looking like Paul Heyman when Paul Heyman hasn't slept in a while, and then another advertisement for WrestleMania because they gotta let you know constantly. We get Kathy Kelly, being carried away as if I don't know, man. This nothing about this screams, we got to see this. And then on top of that, we get Liv Morgan calling Stephanie Vaquer's mom, talking about Stephanie Vaquer's mom again, as if she didn't already call her a dirty, So I'm just like, and then we go backstage to the Stockholm Syndrome thing that's been going on between Asuka and Kyrie for a million years. So we get Kyrie being oppressed by Asuka and all that garbage, and then the fact that we don't even get this for WrestleMania, we don't get a payoff for WrestleMania. It's kind of stupid. Kyrie, or this whole Kyrie Asuka thing and the whole EO thing should be concluded at WrestleMania, because this has been a thing for like 2 years now. We've had one-on-one matches with this situation. We've had tag team matches with this situation, and I remember it was a Stranger Things edition of Raw. We had EO and Rhea versus the Kabuki Warriors. This whole thing is torture, and then on top of that, this whole overacting thing when Kyrie breaks down to her knees and Asuka says, "Good girl, Kyrie, 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 Kyrie." Like every week with no payoff, because they're not even getting a match at Mania. It's ridiculous. The fact that Io Shirai went into WrestleMania 41 as champion, walked out of WrestleMania 41 as champion, did nothing for two whole months because creative didn't have anything else to do for her, because her reign, unfortunately, as great as she is, her reign was just for shock value, because they put her in catering as champion for 2 months just for her to lose her first defense back on TV to Naomi, and then Naomi got pregnant and then had to relinquish the title. So then Io lost for no reason, pretty much. So now she's just back at square one, and this is the whole thing. I'll make a whole video about that. It's just, it's a cycle of, if you team with Rhea or if you team with Charlotte, you'll be stuck in the mid card or even under the mid card somehow, and they'll go on to win championships, and they'll be the ones to go win, go on to WrestleMania. The same thing happened to Asuka. Asuka and Charlotte were a tag team, and then Charlotte ended up winning 1,000 more championships. And it was just unfortunate. But then we get the Usos, but the theme song, I don't understand it, because instead of just going back to, so close now, or even done with that, or even like a theme song of theirs from the past, they just have the same song. It's just us Oos. They changed just me Oos to just us Oos. Like, I don't know, man. It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Whenever I see the MFTs, I get really sleepy. So I kind of just, got drowsy. We have a 6-man tag. So LA Knight, he was one of the biggest fan favorites in WWE at one point, and he kind of still is. Triple H can try to bury him with this booking all he wants to, but the crowd is still going to give him one of the biggest reactions of the show. But not only do we have LA Knight being in the 6-man tag this week, but this weekend we're gonna have him in a 6-man tag going against I Show Speed. It's ridiculous. And then we get Jimmy Uso smacking Jey Uso on the booty, and then we have it's so strange. Yeah, and then since Jey Uso botched, jumping over the rope numerous times, Jimmy Uso lowered the rope so he wouldn't botch. I just found that kind of funny. I think that was a callback to when he, fell on his neck and almost hurt himself against Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. But the match ends because it ends. I think it was LA Knight and the Usos defeated the MFTs or whatever, and then Tama Tonga, said, "Where are you?" No, sorry, they said that to Tama Tonga, and then Tonga Loa, who is probably one of the best wrestlers in the entire galaxy. If you haven't seen his devastating strikes on Okada, you're missing out. So then, LA Knight picks up the win, and then we go to Pat McAfee, and then Gunther, and then Seth Rollins attacking Gunther, and then just for no reason, and apparently there is a reason, but it is a super lazy one, because apparently Gunther says, the reason why I attacked you was because you said you're the best and I'm the best, which means we got to settle this at WrestleMania. So yeah, I mean, I can only think of 2 encounters Gunther and Seth Rollins have had, and that was 2019 at the brand war thingy, and then I think it was last summer. I think it was last July. But this whole thing is it's just lazy and trash and garbage. So none of this really matters. And then we get the Demon being teased, which they should have just saved for the pay-per-view of WrestleMania. But I guess desperate times call for desperate measures, because they're not selling any tickets. Nobody cares about WrestleMania, so they just gotta, throw out all their dimes on the table just for people to care. So Dominic wants the match to be canceled, but then he says nah. And then we get EO versus Kyrie for the millionth time. Kyrie slips and tries to do a spear or something into the corner, but then she slips, and then we get EO diving, but then she almost falls on her neck area. It looked like she almost came off hard, and then she was caught by Asuka because her knee hit the rope again. Her knee hit the middle rope again, so the landing looked pretty scary. But yeah, we get I think it was Asuka and Kyrie, it was Asuka and EO pulling Kyrie like a child, because this whole storyline is about Stockholm syndrome. It's very repetitive. This should have been over at least in 1997, but we're still doing this 30 years later. Oh, dude. Dude, at this point, they should just do a custody match for Kyrie at this point, because this is torture to watch. It truly is, man. And then we get Triple H having his own entrance once more. Even if it's a commercial, it's still for no reason. He just still wants to be the center of attention and spotlight. It's just I don't. And anyways, we get Oba, talking, but then he's out there with Oba. First, he was out there with Brock, but now he's out here with Oba because he has to be out there. Triple H has to be out there. He just has to be seen. He just has to. The Booker has to be seen in this rivalry in particular because he knows it's the biggest draw. And then we get Triple H shaking hands with Obafemi for no reason, because he shouldn't be out there for a reason. So then Liv Morgan has this video that, it was kind of like Britney Spears Fight Club-esque, but I think that, all love to Liv Morgan, but I was not a fan of this whatsoever. So then we get a meaningless universe mode, lazy match between it was Javon Evans and Dragon Lee versus Rusev and JD McDonough, just throwing filler out there, lazy ass exhibition matches of people who are already gonna fight next on WrestleMania, so this is just random pairing. But the thing I find funny, the huge logic gap, the whole plot hole, is that Rusev, one of his last feuds was against Dom. He was feuding with the Judgment Day. He he had problems with the Judgment Day, and now they're cool because they're going into. Oh yeah, Rusev was standing strong finally, which is great because Rusev has been a jobber since he's gotten back, especially jobbing out to Dominic Mysterio like 69 times. And then Roman Reigns comes out, he does his whole thing about, just standing there and saying they acknowledge me, and then CM Punk makes his Shield entrance. And then, he talks about how CM Punk should stay he should stay out of the ring because they won't need the microphones if he does come into the ring. But the thing that I find interesting about Roman Reigns calling out CM Punk's, hypocrisies is before Roman Reigns won the Royal Rumble, he was honest and said, yeah, I have a part-time schedule and I have to keep coming back because they can't build new stars creatively. And then right before AEW Dynasty, Roman Reigns is like, yeah, there's no competition for WWE. We're doing great. Okay. All right, Joe. Yeah, but then the show ended unceremoniously because they just didn't have anything for this show, unfortunately. Yeah, this is, just another case of, just we're just gonna phone it in and just say screw it. I guess WrestleMania this year, no one's gonna care about this episode of Raw. I guess that's what they were thinking.